All right, guys, we are back again. Dynamic Man Podcast, episode 32. This is Dating for Marriage, or otherwise known as How to Not Cuff a Girl. So if you are here, as always, we got Uncle Guns in here telling you to like, comment, and subscribe. If you are here, drop a comment in the chat. If you guys are here, drop a comment in the chat. I want to see who's here. I got to see who's here. I got to see some people. I got to see some people in the chat before we get rolling. Let me know that you are watching this epic Dynamic Man podcast. This is going to be a good one. I apologize for those of you. I'm sure that there were some of you who wanted me to go to client archetype number 3, talking about keeping and deepening relationships with women, problems that those guys suffer from. Guys, we're going to do it. I got an opening tomorrow now. I didn't think I had one. We'll do it then. Okay? We're going to do it. Don't worry about that. But sometimes you got to go where the energy is. And, you know, a few of the posts, excuse me, a few of the posts I was putting out there today were really resonating, really popping off about this concept of dating for marriage. So, as I said, if you're here, drop a comment in the chat, and we're going to get started in just a moment and talk about this, because this is really something that I've been sitting on this one. I've been sitting on this one for a bit. I've been sitting on it. I've been trying to pay attention to it to really make sure I understand exactly what's going on. Because there's some subtleties with it that I don't think that people really talk about. I don't think that people really talk about. Okay, so as Guns is saying here, cuffing season is right around the corner. Today's show is very relevant. So look, this is the situation. I have a lot of guys. I work with a lot of clients who are religious, like maybe very religious. I'm just going to say, it's not like my only clientele. I work with a range of people, almost, broadly conservative or at least moderate, right? You gotta be on the right, I think, to support a January 6th guy, a Trump supporter. But they're conservative. But as people know, conservative movement is on some, I think, metaphysical level. There's two different sides. There's one that's much more religious, and then there's one that's much more, I guess you call it vitalist. That's what I would say. That does not mean that there isn't overlap, that there aren't, religious individuals who have a lot of vitality, or that there are vitalists that are very, appreciative of religion, right? There's an overlap. But a lot of what I'm going to be saying is going to be relevant much more to the religious crowd, because the vitalists know what I'm talking about, but they may not have been aware of everything I'm saying. So if you're one of the vitalists, I think you are still going to enjoy this show. You're going to get a lot out of this show, but because it's going to help give, even when you are succeeding in something, it helps to give greater perspective of it as to why it's working. And a lot of people don't actually know why it's working, right? But for the religious people in the audience, and hello, Michael, it's good to see you. For the religious people in the audience, this is what I would say with this. I want to give this like precursor beforehand. I am not here. I'm not here. I put this on my email list recently. I am not here to have you, to tell you to change your values, to tell you that your values are wrong. Okay? I am not somebody who thinks that super like casual sex is a great thing for people. Okay? I'm not. Even though I'm very pro sex, I don't think that casual, mindless sex is a good thing. And I totally respect and understand the desire to wait until marriage for sex. Okay? And I'm not going to tell you can't do that, but what I'm going to tell you should at least help you to understand how to refine your, let me put it this way. There's going to be trade-offs to your strategy. And if you want one thing, something's going to have to give. This is the point I'm going to be making in this entire video, is that if you are waiting until marriage for sex, you are going to first off confront problems in today's dating market, and we're going to go into this in detail. And if you are going to mitigate those problems, you are going to have to take a very different approach than you are probably used to taking, and that your church has told you that you should be taking. Okay? So let's start with the post that inspired today's show. This is going to get me a lot of grief from some circles, but dating for marriage is a fool's errand in 2025. It doesn't work. It just turns women off. If you meet a girl with any immediate immediate is bolded, by the way, immediate intention other than good times and good sex, she is going to sense the agenda and split. Women aren't looking to be a wife. This isn't even just because of feminism. It's a misunderstanding of female psychology. Women only want to be a wife to the man that they desire and won over. They want to feel like they were so special. They turned him on so much that they made him commit. It's extremely unromantic for a woman to date a guy whose main goal is looking for someone to settle down with. It makes her feel like she is some generic person who checks some boxes for him. Not to mention, it puts a lot of pressure on the interaction. Your desire to sleep with a woman needs to be first and foremost in the dating process. That doesn't mean you need to sleep with every woman or that you need to do it immediately. You can and should be selective, but you do need to make the gratification of this drive the prime mover of the interaction. The sexual tension must be palpable. This is actually how it's always been. People got married in the past because they wanted to gratify this drive. That's why they didn't wait very long to tie the knot. But the religious secular rift in society has made it so many religious people are separated from this vitality, almost like it's an afterthought or perk of something more profound. This is backwards. Yes, a marriage should expand into something greater than carnality, but the intimacy of the kids, the spiritual union starts with what it has always started with: sex. Putting this first is not only the recipe to gain a girl today, but laying the foundation for a healthy relationship. Anyone telling you anything different simply doesn't understand what it's like out there and is making it paradoxically harder for you to find a wife. Okay. Randy, what's going on, man? What's going on? Okay. Look, I am your dating coach who wants you to find a wife. Okay. I want you to find a wife. I do not want you to follow some set of fucking rules that don't work. Guys are going to have to deconstruct a lot of assumptions that they have if they are going to get a wife today. Okay? I see way too much bullshit in the manosphere. I see way too much bullshit in the manosphere. People talking about things that are simply not important or relevant. And if you actually focus on them, will hold you back from getting a wife. The question you need to ask yourself is, do you want to have a wife? Do you want to meet a great girl? Do you want to have great sex? Do you want to have a family? Or do you want to be right? Okay? Do you want to be right? Do you want to be more moral? What do you want? What do you want to do? Do you want moral smugness? Do you want to tell people that you're better than other people and you want to be alone? Or do you actually want to get results? That's what this is about. That's all I care about. I care about getting you results, and I care about doing it in a way that jives with your values as best as possible. But a lot of you guys out there have, as we would say, way too many variables that do not compute together. They do not lead to any solution. They are mutually exclusive. Okay. What I was saying in this post is very, very simple. Religious guys are going out and they are looking to get a wife, and ideally, right, a wife that's either a virgin or very low body count, and they are leading, even though these are not, I want to be something clear here, these are not like dorks. These are not some like church dork guys. No offense, church. Well, a little bit. You guys should not do that. You should be better than that. But these are not dorks. These are guys often who are like they're in like the top 5, if not top 1% of men in terms of how they look. Okay, they are successful, over 6 figures, often multiple 6 figures, often self-employed. Okay, these guys are handsome, rich, established, intelligent. They're good with people. Usually they're pretty good with people, okay? These are not guys that like are not objectively desirable. This is important because a lot of the argument is like, well, just build your value as a man, and then, you go out there and women are going to be, throwing themselves at you. No, no. And why is that? Why is that the case? Doesn't mean this stuff isn't important. The reason it's not the case is because the reason you talk to women is to fuck them. Okay. I'm not talking about friends and stuff. I'm not saying that you can have some platonic dynamics. All right. I'm not talking about that. But the reason that you talk to a woman in a romantic context is to fuck them. It's to have sex. Do you get that? Have you really internalized that? If you are more of a religious guy, have you really internalized that? Or are you thinking that I need to meet a girl so that I can get married and I can have kids, and yeah, we'll have sex, but I want to get married, I want to have kids. And I'm looking for a girl who will, who's Christian and is going to fit into this. And I'm a virtuous guy, so I'm not going to have sex before marriage, or I'm not going to have sex. I'm going to put off on this stuff. I'm telling you, if you're doing this, you are absolutely, absolutely shit in the bed. I guarantee that you are not having the dating life that you want. And the reason is, like I said in that post, it's unromantic for a woman, first off. You are putting a woman in a box she doesn't want to be in necessarily. Doesn't mean she doesn't want to be a wife. But what you're saying is that you're viewing her as a means to an end to some extent. And this is what's really important, you are not anchored into the proximate, immediate reason that you guys have something going on to begin with. You should be having something going on to begin with, which is to have sex. There should be sparks. You should want each other. One of the things that drives me crazy, and I've talked about this in different contexts with trads, drives me absolutely crazy. Okay, first off, the Bible was written in a time period where people did not wait years to get married. They waited weeks and months to get married. Okay. Very often it was, I like her, she likes me, I'm going to talk to her dad. Here's my dowry, and it's going to be set up in the next couple weeks. Like literally, it could be a couple weeks. It could be like, okay, met the girl, I've been seeing her around. I'd like to marry her. Dad approves. Girl's blushing. She likes it. And you're together and you're in bed by the end of the month. That's how it was. Okay. So look, having sex outside of marriage in that context was very, very bad. It was very bad. It had terrible social consequences. And because there was no birth control, because there was nothing else, when you got together, you better stay together because children could result of this. And, there was a much stricter society. That's not to say that I'm saying that you should just have sex before marriage. But what I am telling you is this is what I'm telling you. If when these rules existed, people got married very, very quickly, then you need to get married very, very quickly. I've always said 2 years max for trad people, and I really prefer 1 year. And I think that is the maximum. If we're being realistic from like a real sexual standpoint, that is in many ways the maximum that you are going to have a really keep a sexual charge and to be able to, to pull stuff off. Okay, there's always exceptions, right? But you don't want to play by the exceptions, because a lot of people will not have good marriages, even if they do get together. This is good advice. Engage in 9 months, married in within 18 months. It's in the same range, but the point is you have to get married fast. And honestly, I like a year because it allows actually some proper vetting of who she is. In the past, you'd be really vetting her family for the most part. She was that was most of it. Now you have to do more of that. I think a year is a good amount of time to make the full conclusion of stuff, right? But this is the point. I don't want to get too much into the weeds with this right here. I don't want to get too much in the weeds with that specific thing. I'm just saying that you are going to have to take on more risk. And the reason you're going to have to take on more risk is because it has to be so apparent to this woman that you want to fuck. You need to want to fuck this girl more than most of these other criteria that you guys are talking about. And if you are unanchored from that vitality, if you're unanchored from that drive, you are going to create problems. I'm going to show you something. This is from a new client. Okay. I say new client because I've only, we've agreed to work together. Everything's been, paid for. We have not even had our first coaching call yet. But when I made this post this morning, he sent me this. Okay. You can see it right here today, 11:34 a.m. Based on that thread you posted this morning, you won't believe what happened to me on a date I went on Monday. Oh boy, what was it? Literally, I thought you wrote that thread about me, like you had a camera there or something. Matched with her on Hinge, both literally wrote to each other. We wanted someone who loved Jesus and went to church. We get to dinner. She's falling for me harder than any girl she ever has. Any girl ever has. Unbelievable connection. We start to get flirty at the bar. She's like basically sitting in my lap, talking to me about kids we were going to have together, and then giving me these glances and starting to push back on how fast we should move physically because she said she moves super slow. We're making out, etc. She brings up moving slow again. I come out with, don't worry, I'm waiting for marriage. Instant death to the date. 30 minutes later, I drop her off and get the we're not compatible text the next morning. Okay. I asked him if I could share this because it's sometimes you guys have to see it. Many of you guys may relate to some kind of experience like that. That may be an more extreme version. You may not have put together all the pieces, but I'm telling you guys this. She needs to want to feel you going after her. Now, this is one of the big issues with this stuff is the nature of polarity, and this is what I don't think the church understands. Waiting for sex is fine, but it is not predominantly the man's job to restrain the sex. It's not. Okay? It's not. And that's not me saying that on a moral level, on a spiritual level, that it's good for men to just kind of go off and indulge. And, I'm not saying that for them. I'm not saying that for them in their personal relationship, but I'm just saying this from the standpoint of polarity. The man is the force that pushes the relationship forward. This is true with sexual escalation, and it's true with the relationship forming, and it is true with deepening the relationship and actually growing as a couple. If the man doesn't do these things, then the polarity in the relationship collapses. Okay? It's very frustrating for women to flip polarity. It's very frustrating for them to do it. They will do it temporarily, but they won't do it for a very long time. Okay? Outside of the 10% of women who are masculine, 10% of men who are male. We're not talking about them. They're exceptions to this entire rule. So, the problem, of course, is that if the man is the one who's supposed to push the interaction towards sex, and the woman, her role is to be the one who says no. She's the one who's like, no, not, it's the not yet. No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. But she's still there. She's still interested. She's the one who puts the brakes on things. She's the one who slows things down. That's how it works in a healthy polarity. The man is hunting for the woman's the prey, and they both like it. Okay? They both like it. When she likes the guy who's hunting her, she likes it. Creates sexual tension. So when the guy says, when you're flirting and when there's all this tension, right? Between and she's really into you and you say, "Well, I'm going to be waiting for marriage." Now she's like, "This guy doesn't want me. This guy doesn't want me." That's what she's feeling. She's feeling that he has neutered himself. It's like, cuz if he really wanted me, he would be going after me right now. He would be trying to take my pants off right now if he really wanted me. And because she doesn't feel like she's wanted, she it becomes a polarity shift. So this is the point I'm making on this side. There's more we're going to be talking about with this and why it's a problem. But the church has a problem in general with how it does not talk to women or instruct women. It's always talking to men. And I get it. Men are the leaders of the household, etc. Okay. But bottom line is also women need to have their own guidance from these institutions. And the reality is that these institutions do not say this kind of stuff to men. I have heard from tons of clients, it doesn't matter whether they're Orthodox, whether they're Catholic, whether they're any sort of flavor of Protestant. It doesn't matter what kind of Christian they are. Okay, so I don't want to hear any of that sectarian, nonsense. Well, my church, they're all the same. I've worked with all of them. I've worked with scores of these guys from these different backgrounds, all of them. Okay, it doesn't make any difference. They are all telling these guys to approach women in a very you know, godly kind of, Christ-focused sort of way. It doesn't work. Notice it in this interaction with the client. The shared values are part of it, but it was subtext to the sexual drive. I want to make this clear. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be looking for shared values. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be deeper connection. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying that you shouldn't even be looking for marriage. You can absolutely be looking for marriage when you're going and talking to women. You can have that in your mind. Hey, I'd like to find a girl to marry. But when you are in the interaction with a woman, you need to be focused on what is in front of you, not what is years down the line. You need to be focused on, I want that girl. I want her wet and I want her. Sorry if I'm being vulgar. I'm sorry if I'm being vulgar, but this is really huge. This is really so important. She needs to feel that. And let her put the brakes on it. And if she won't put the brakes on it, this is a problem with women because it's women giving away their own power. She's giving away her own power. You can make your own determination at that point what you want to do. But typically what happens to a guy who's really conservative is a woman gives it up really easily like that. He might lose interest in her. Others, and I think that if she's a good girl otherwise, it's a reasonable position to take, don't hold it against them so much. And if there's other levels of connection there and they might build off of that, right? That's how a lot of relationships form today. I've already commented, in prior weeks, how I do think that is, it's a harder way to make a relationship. I think women would do themselves a lot of service if they put the brakes on things a little bit more. But this girl was trying to do that, right? She wanted him to play the role of the guy who was trying to get her, and she wanted to play the role of the girl who was going to be, had to be conquered. She was trying to get him to invest when he was like, "Yeah, well, don't worry. Like, I'm waiting until marriage." Now she's like, "Oh, great. Now I'm a girl in some guy's plan. He doesn't really want me." Right? And there's also pressure on there because now she's thinking, we're not going to actually be intimate unless everything happens with marriage. And marriage today is a lot more complicated than it was. Back then, you thought a girl was cute and that was it. You want to have sex. So, okay, you're going to have sex and now you're going to have kids. That's what's going to happen inevitably. And you're off to the races. And All this other stuff didn't play as much of a role. Now today you're like, well, we're going to get married. There's the secular influx that comes in. But what about assets? Are we in the right stage of life? Are we prepared yet? Marriage is this much bigger thing than just sex. That is the framing of it. So if you want to wait until marriage to have sex, you have to make sex the focus of marriage again. And that means you have to be trying to get to that marriage fast. Now that carries its own risks of pressure. And this is a problem with the modern situation, right? It's a problem with the modern situation because of how big marriage has been, in the secular world, how big marriage has become of a step that it's like there's a lot of pressure for a woman to go there. So she may want to have sex, but marriage is a lot of pressure now. Whereas before it was just like something that you would automatically do when you wanted to have sex. That's what it used to be. Those have been decoupled. So if you're going to do it, you have to be a little bit wild with it. And you also have to be with the woman in the right sort of circles and be like, hey, look, I want you. Yeah, I'm waiting, but I'm not I want to have sex. I want to have sex. So I'm not waiting very long. So, you know, you better understand that if you want me, we're going to get married and we're going to get married pretty soon because I'm not waiting around. I want you. You have to be really channeling that. And you're still going to lose women in the process of doing that, by the way. But it is going to feel very, very different when she feels that you really want her. And it's like, if you keep turning me on like this, we're going to be married next week. That's the kind of energy that you got to be bringing into it. And yeah, there's risk with it, but I'm just telling you the truth. You cannot lead these interactions with women with I'm looking for a wife and you cannot do that. Stop doing it. You are blowing yourself out of the water. Women don't want that. In the same way that men don't like when a woman is in husband hunting mode. Well, a lot of guys don't like that, of course, because women are in husband hunting mode when they're older. That's part of the reason. But a lot of it is also that it feels very agenda driven. So these guys are coming across agenda driven in the same way. Josh, you have a question here. Let's see. How much of her feeling your desire is based on your actions versus your words? For saying you're waiting for marriage but escalating physically to a point. So this is a really good question. Mixed messages are always very sexy. This is more of a tactical question, though. But I don't want it to distract from the main point I'm trying to make. But mixed messages can create extra tension and can be very sexy. So if this guy was saying, "Yeah, I'm waiting for marriage," and he's got his hand up her leg, "Yeah, I'm waiting for marriage." First off, she doesn't know exactly if he's serious or not. That's when you can start to drop the lines about yeah, I don't know. You wanna elope right now? Because I don't know how. I don't know. You have to be giving that off, that real desire for her. Let her put the brakes on it, right? That's what needs to be happening. That's what needs to be happening. If she draws a line like, "Well, I don't want to do it so early. I don't want you," becomes your girlfriend, and marriage comes fast thereafter. But you understand, you're letting her really pump the brakes about your commitment level. Now, I'm not saying that you have to wait to the point where the woman is demanding a commitment. I actually think that that's overshooting the mark. I think that loses its romance in its own way. But you do always want to wait until she is absolutely, absolutely chomping at the bit for you to make that next step before you make it. That's art versus science in this. But to go back to Josh's question to make sure I'm really answer this, words are important. It's the interplay of the two of them together. If I'm not showing any interest in her and I talk about how I want to have sex, it's kind of weird to say it, to be honest, but just for the sake of example, it's not going to work very well. So the action and the energy matters a lot more than the words. But the words make an impact. Words absolutely make an impact. What you say makes an impact. So, like I just said, if you're gonna take this route, you gotta go much faster with it. You gotta go much faster with the process. You gotta make it feel like, she's gotta go forward with it because she's gotta have the sex. And there's risks to this kind of stuff. There is. Now, does that mean you are never going to be able to have success? No, that doesn't mean that. But I'm gonna say something that you're not supposed to say, but most of the people who actually are married in trad communities who talk like this did not follow their own advice with it. They'll say things like, "Well, don't have sex before marriage, don't cohabitate." They all did already. They already did. So this is food for thought for people. Okay, it's food for thought. I do not want you to go against your value system because of what I'm saying, but I'm telling guys, I do this for a living. I see it firsthand, and I see the guys who are trying to do. I don't want to say do the right thing because I think that that's like overshooting it. Um, I'm just gonna say not leading with their sexual energy in the interaction. They are failing big time with women. They are losing women over and over again because they're afraid of transgressing in that direction, but they really should be pushing much more in that direction. And I don't think the church is doing them any favors. I'm just gonna say that. I don't think they're doing any favors. And honestly, it's kind of messed up that the church is judging these men when they are doing jack shit to help their members actually get together. If you're a church that's filled with single men and women and you are unable to pair them up, then you are messing up big time. You are really messing up. I'm trying to do better with my language. So it's, you kind of lose your credibility to even talk about what people are supposed to be doing in that case, how people are supposed to conduct themselves. Because obviously you cannot even get people with the same values in the same community space to get together. So maybe you're just wrong. Maybe you just don't understand how men and women work. A lot of this stuff, as I said, was obfuscated in the past because marriage was the gateway to sex. The only way you got sex otherwise was to go see a prostitute, pretty much. There was not a lot of seduction. That was very, very niche, very, you know, that was not a super common thing that happened. Okay. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it's nothing like today. Casual sex was not a thing. So people didn't think about what we're talking about now. But once it was no longer needed to get any kind of intimate sex, right? If Because in the past you either had to have an affair to get some kind of intimate sex or you had to be married, right? So you had to be married essentially. Someone was married. Somebody was married, right? So if that was the case, then there was no issue. There was absolutely no issue with you know, you didn't have to think about this. And people got married fast back then too. They were married within 1 to 2 years. Absolutely. Absolutely. But the variable that we have to think about here is the pressure. I I do not think that it is I think bringing up a lot of this stuff so early is also really just unsexy. I think it is. I think it is. So, you gotta have more of that vitality. If you're staying within a more traditional community, how would you navigate fathers or others thinking you're disrespecting their daughter or not more self-controlled if you follow the strategy? Well, there's an element here also of, I mean, it's very difficult to get into like a very, very specific context. Like, is she living at her father's house? Are they chaperoning dates? I mean, if there's chaperoning dates, this is like a different level. Like, you obviously can't do this stuff there, but you're gonna have to convey it much more with body language. and, long pauses with her and, what are you thinking about? Kind of stuff like that. You're gonna have to be creating, like saying, I wish your father wasn't here, kind of stuff, like out of earshot kind of stuff. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to channel some of that bad boy in that context while respecting the boundaries. Um, I'm not saying that it's theoretically impossible for guys to do this. I'm just saying that the if you are dealing with like in the context that you are talking about, Josh, here, where these are women who are also all virgins, this is a super trad context, so it's a little bit different. It's not 100% different, because what I'm talking about with the energy is still there, but this is a this is still very much a thing. It's still very much a thing. You are going to have to move stuff forward. And outside of that context, if a woman is saying, okay, she's Christian, she wants to, have this, she wants to have whatever. I think being the guy who leads with restraint is just, you know, it's not it. She should be putting up the restraint. When a woman is putting up the restraint, it works. When a man is doing it, it does not work. It depolarizes the entire interaction. That's just it. That's it. How do you know your client's date just didn't want to wait until marriage like he did, and that's what really put her off? Well, it's a good question, and I don't think she did want to wait until marriage, actually. So I don't I absolutely don't think that she wanted to wait until marriage. That is a proximate point, though. Here, that's something that's part of the whole problem, right? That you have guys who want to wait, but the women don't, and that's its own issue. So I don't have an answer. Tell these guys, do they want to violate their values, or can they keep those values if they just dial up the sexual intensity, so that they're contradicting what they're saying. Their actions don't seem to correlate with what they are saying, so that the woman doesn't then feel like he doesn't want her. But again, it goes back to what I said. He's going to have to then move fast. There's another thing here. Um, you should have approached flirting with women at the church as you should in most other situations. Uh, I mean, okay, I got to be more specific than that, I guess, because there's a lot of different environments. You still got to be cocky. You got to bring some cockiness. You got to create desire. You got to be the guy who creates some tension. So, accusing the girls there of missing you, when you see them, being warm, being the guy who goes up, gives them a hug when he sees them. Oh, so you guys miss me? You gotta do that kind of stuff, even if you're not getting, like, you have to be creating that dynamic of the women, pushing the women so that they're more into you. There's one last thing I want to say here, guys. Because I'm gonna have to run. It's the usual clock. I want to just hit this wife material stuff super quickly at the end here, because part of the objection stuff is about the wife material. I did a whole video on wife material, but this is some extra things I want to bring in. One of the most common comments you see on here, typically from men who don't have wives or women who aren't one, is that, they can't, a woman's not wife material. There's no wife material women. I really think that this stuff is bullshit. I really think it is big fucking bullshit. All that matters universally is that you find her attractive and want to have sex with her. She doesn't hate men, and she isn't mentally ill, which, let's be honest, connects a lot with hating men. But you can be mentally ill and not hate men. Okay. Now there's subparts here, and of course, you also have to have a girl who shares your fundamental values. But I'm encouraging guys to not overthink this. I really am. Because if you are putting up all these things, like she's got to have this much notch count, she's got to know how to do this, she's got, A lot of these things just don't matter. They don't matter. If you have a woman who shares your values fundamentally, and she likes men and she's not nuts and you're attracted to her, everything else is you can build it. It's part of your own relationship. There's some different dynamics going on maybe than other relationships, but you can build a healthy relationship on that because she's somebody who's not a lunatic. She doesn't have tons of resentment towards you simply because you have a penis and you want to have sex with her and she wants to presumably do the same to you. You can make a wife out of that. A lot of these girls, I know people don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. I don't care. I'm going to tell the guys who want to find a wife in 2025 and want to be not just find a wife, who want to be happy because want to have a good life, want to have a good love life. Okay. This is just, you have to get over it. Just like, I'm serious. Just get over it. I'm not saying you have to have no standards whatsoever, but if I hear one more thing here, guys, fixate on the notch count stuff, I'm going to blow my brains out. These guys are not creating desire in women. They are not dating women, and they keep talking about this stuff. Meanwhile, there are other guys out there who are out dating women. They're learning, and they meet a girl, and the girl partied a little bit in college, like every other girl in college, and they don't hold it against her because they also did partied and they also did things. They don't have this smugness to them, and they go together and they have a great marriage. They have a great love life because she doesn't hate sex. He doesn't hate sex. They start going to church. They bring their kids to church. They give them, good values. To some extent, it's like this purist culture. This purist culture. People don't want to. I think it's self-defeating. I actually think it's a trauma response, to be honest. I really think it's a trauma response. People just don't know what to think about. If you marry a man-hating feminist, you are going to have a terrible marriage. Okay? If you marry a woman who is mentally unstable, you're going to have a terrible marriage. If you marry a woman who you are not into sexually, you don't really love the way she looks, you're going to have a terrible marriage. Everything else, with the exception of those handful of very personal requirements, everything else is what it is. It is not as important as you think. A wife is made in the same way that a woman becomes a mother later on too. When she has kids, she doesn't know how to be a mother until she has kids. If you can instruct and guide a healthy minded woman who is actually attracted to you into being a good wife and having a good dynamic, okay? Focus on what matters. Don't focus on what doesn't matter. I love you guys. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. See you guys tomorrow on the next Dynamic Man podcast.